All right, y'all. This is fun. We have an elite media ghoul now begging Joe Biden to not debate Donald Trump. This is in The Atlantic, written by the horrific Bush-era neocon David Frum. He says the following: why Biden should not debate Trump. The networks want their show, but to give the challenger equal status on a TV stage would be a dire normalization of his attempted coup. David Frum, let me explain something to you. I can go toe-to-toe with you on the issue of hating Trump. In fact, I would argue I hate Trump way more than you do. Why? Because you hate him for, like, characteristics and qualities. Like, who he is as a person is more your issue. I have an issue not only with him as a person, I have an issue with his policies. You actually agree with, like, 85 to 90% of his policies. So, I'm second to nobody on hating Trump. The fact of the matter is, ain't no normalization, bitch. He's the Republican nominee for president. He's arguably one of the most, or the most, famous man on the planet. Whether or not you want to acknowledge it, he is on equal footing in a challenge with Joe Biden. Why, don't debate him, because then it'll look like it's a presidential race and you two are challenging each other. David, that is what's happening. You could shove your head in the fucking sand, but that's the reality. Don't normalize this man who's already been normalized 57 trillion times over. Guys, that ship has sailed. If you were to say to me, hey man, the year's 2016, the way we want you to not normalize Trump is to be indifferent to him and then he'll just go away. That may have worked back then. We are so far past that now. He's already the nominee on the Republican ticket in 2024. He's normalized no matter what you say or do. Okay, you guys could tell this argument kind of triggers me here. A consortium of television networks yesterday released a joint statement inviting President Joe Biden and his presumptive opponent Donald Trump to debate on their platforms. Quote, there's simply no substitute for the candidates debating each other and before the American people. Their visions for the future of our nation. President Biden's spokesperson should answer like this. The Constitution is not debatable. The president does not participate in forums with a person under criminal indictment for his attempt to overthrow the Constitution. In their letter of invitation, the networks referred to presidential debates as a competition of ideas. But one of the two men they're inviting turned the last election into a competition of violence. Trump tried to seize the presidency by force in 2021. Of course, they have the thing where, what do you have to do? Fucking sign up in order to see the rest of this? What fucking assholes. I would never pay for an Atlantic subscription. Never in a million years. If Trump had not occupied the presidency at the time of his attempted coup d'etat, he would very likely be already serving a lengthy prison term for his alleged crimes against the 2020 election. That's actually true. Earlier this month, the principal figure in the January 6th attack was sentenced to 7 years in prison, the latest of many such serious convictions and sentences. Fortunately for Trump, the U.S. justice system is highly cautious, deferential, and slow when dealing with persons of wealth and importance. That's also true. Although the followers have been punished, the indicted leader of the plot is unlikely to face trial before Election Day 2024. Until tried and convicted, Trump must be regarded as innocent in the eyes of the law, but the political system has eyes of its own. No doubt exists about what Trump did or why, or what his actions meant. Trump lost an election, then incited a violent mob to attack the Capitol. He hoped that the insurrectionists would terrorize, kidnap, or even kill his own vice president in order to stop the ceremony to formalize the victory of Biden and his vice president Kamala Harris. By disrupting the ceremony, Trump schemed to cast the election's results to the House of Representatives where Republicans, blah, blah. This is all that happened on January 6th. It's all true. This is all true. The single most important question on the ballot for 2024 is, does any of this matter? Is violence by losers to overturn election results an acceptable tool of politics? Is anti-constitutional violence by election losers just another political issue, like inflation or immigration or foreign policy? The television executives apparently believe that, yes, violence is just another issue. If there is one thing Americans can agree on during this polarized time, they write, it is that the stakes of this election are exceptionally high. The stakes are high would be a fair way to describe an election like that of 1980, when Americans faced a choice between two very different approaches to taxes and spending. It would be a fair way to describe the 2004 election, when Americans were asked to choose between an early exit from the Iraq War and staying the course. But it seems a morally trivializing way to describe an election in which one of the candidates has been criminally indicted for his part in a conspiracy to overthrow the Constitution. Okay, so I have a number of responses to this. What's the way to remedy this situation? If your argument is Trump is so beyond the pale that we shouldn't be in this place, I agree with you. But how do you remedy it? Okay, well, one answer was they should have launched the investigations earlier. They should have indicted him criminally earlier. You should have the trials earlier. Agreed. Okay, well, we didn't get there. So what do you want to do about it? You could pass some sort of a law where if you're under criminal indictment, you can't run for office, right? I might support that law. I guess it would depend on the crime. If it's like a weed crime, it's fine. If it's you committed murder, not fine, right? Like, how do you want to remedy this? His answer is just, let's say he's beyond the pale and then not debate. But the thing is, we all want him to be beyond the pale, but he's not. So you have to acknowledge that reality as it is. To the point about the Constitution, he brings up, like, this guy said he wants to terminate the Constitution. I know. All the more reason to debate and remind everybody he said he wants to terminate the Constitution. He says he wants to suspend the Constitution. You can't just say, here's a litany of the horrible things he did, and that's why we need to not address him, not acknowledge him, not debate him. All the litany of terrible things he said and did and believes, that's all the more reason to bring it up. So, look, the only answer, like, you would have needed the timeline to be sped up. Start the investigation earlier, do the indictment earlier, have him in court before even running, right? Like, that would have been the answer. Then it's possible he gets found guilty, he's in prison, you know, he's not going to win from prison. I know some people disagree with that, but I think he certainly wouldn't win from behind bars. That's my take on it. But in that scenario, okay, there you go. Then David Frum gets what he wants, and I'm good with it too. But, like, that's not where we are. That's not where we are. And so his way of dealing with that seems to be, let's just pretend like he's not as popular as he is and doesn't have as good of a chance as he does. But I'm sorry, you have to grapple with that. I don't know how else to get it through to you. You have to grapple with that. And, you know, and by the way, his argument is Trump is so beyond the pale, you shouldn't normalize him at all, right? You could make that same argument for Biden. He's aiding and abetting a genocide that Israel is doing in Gaza, sending them money, sending them weapons. And so people would fairly say, I also think Biden's beyond the pale. It's a different kind of beyond the pale, but it's also beyond the pale. So by that logic, should we pay no mind, pay no attention to Biden, say you're, out of polite society, etc.? No, look, we were dealt the hand that we were dealt, and we have to deal with the facts as they exist. That's the bottom line. All right, let's continue. Imagine such a presidential debate. President Biden, you could hear the moderator say, we'll go to Mr. Trump's alleged violent coup in a moment, but in this segment, we are discussing food prices. The role of the television networks here is, unfortunately, not an innocent one. The stakes of the election are high, is a commencement address way of phrasing the thought, we are anticipating huge ratings. Trump is box office, everybody knows that, and box office translates into revenues at a time when television is losing them. For TV executives to convince themselves that what is good for their own bottom line is good for the country seems very easy. But good for the country is radically not the case here. It's funny, right? I agree with the point that he's making, but this logic also applies to him. He was one of the members of the Bush administration that got us into the illegal and offensive war in Iraq, where hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians died, millions of people were displaced, thousands of our own troops were killed. And so that's not just another issue to debate. You, David Frum, are a war criminal. In any reasonable society, you would be nowhere near any platform or position of power or the ability to write an article where thousands of people read it. That's true. It is true of Trump. He tried to do a violent coup and he still exists in the ether and is leading on the Republican side. So, but again, if I accept your logic, which is fine, you also would be excised from polite society based on that logic. But it's funny. He wants to draw the line in a way where I'm still allowed in society, even though I'm a war criminal and, I have blood on my hands from all the decisions I made in the administration I was with. I'm allowed, but he's not. Imagine watching the debate with the sound off. What would you see? Two men, both identified as presidents, standing side by side, receiving equal deference from some of the most famous hosts and anchors on American television. The message, violence to overthrow an election is not such a big deal. Some Americans disapprove of it, but others have different opinions. That's why we have debates. Coup d'etat, tip of the hat, or wag of the finger. Look, again, I wish we lived in a country where Trump now had a 7% approval rating and was away in shame in a cave somewhere, right? I wish we don't live there. So what do you want to do about that? Just pretend like we live there? Or are you going to acknowledge there is a race going on right now? There's an election. You need to defeat him. You need to landslide him. In order to do that, the best approach is not head in the sand, pretend he doesn't exist. The best approach is bring up all of these things, bring them up to his face, hammer them home, make it the dominant narrative, and make it so that he gets defeated. Because obviously, the criminal cases are not defeating him fast enough, so you're going to have to defeat him politically, whether or not we like that. And I agree, I don't like that, but that's where we are. For Biden to refuse to rub elbows with Trump won't make Trump go away, of course. The Confederacy did not go away when Abraham Lincoln refused to concede the title of president to Jefferson Davis. That's not why Lincoln consistently denied Davis that title. Lincoln understood how demoralizing it would be to Union-loyal Americans if he accepted the claim that Davis was a president rather than a rebel and an insurrectionist. Biden should understand how demoralizing it would be to democracy-loyal Americans if he accepted the claim that Trump is more than a January 6th defendant. But okay, again, here's the disconnect. You can acknowledge all of that about Trump and still get in the fucking ring and fight. Because he's in the ring. And if you're not there, you let him set the narrative. You let him dominate with his talking points, right? I accept he's an insurrectionist. I accept he uses political violence. I accept he tried to do a coup. I'm against all of that. But for you to say don't debate him, you're not winning in that scenario. You don't get to walk out scot-free and say, I really got him there. No, because you blink and you look up and all of a sudden he was leading by 5 points in the polls. It was only when Biden started swinging at Trump's face and throwing haymakers within the past month that now the numbers have changed and Biden's doing a little better than he was. Biden has engaged in many high-level television debates over the years, vice presidential debates in 2008 and 2012, debates for the he did good in both those, by the way, debates for the Democratic presidential nomination in 1987, 2007, and 2019 and 20. Biden also debated then President Trump in fall of 2020. Biden is and was a capable television communicator. He definitely not is, as he demonstrated again in his recent State of the Union address. Biden delivered the address with such force and skill that Trump had to imply that Biden must be relying on performance-enhancing drugs. To be fair, I think he is. I also think Trump is, but it's fine. At their age, I want them taking that. If DeSantis or Haley had won the Republican nomination in 2024, Biden would and should have debated them. But this is different. That's the thing. It's really not. It's a weird, smug, condescending way to approach life, right? And politics. Is like you have to navigate in the world we exist in, not the one that you want us to exist in. And it's just like, I think the end result of listening to somebody like David Frum is Trump is more likely to win. You understand what I'm saying? Obviously, he disagrees, but I think he's wrong. But look, final point again, I'll just reiterate one I made earlier, which is, I agree that it would be much healthier and much more reasonable if we lived in a society that already said, look, this guy is way beyond the pale and nobody wants anything to do with him. He has a 7% approval rating or whatever. I actually agree with that. I wish we did live in that society. And I try to make arguments towards those ends to make that be the case, right? But that same point also applies to David Frum. He's one of the Bush-era neocon war criminals. He should also be not in polite society anymore. And so any line he would draw that like keeps Trump out but him in, his moral compass is super fucking warped. So I don't want to hear his highfalutin, condescending-ass arguments about how somehow not engaging in a debate allows you to keep your purity and your prospects of winning. Like, that doesn't add up. Doesn't add up even a little bit. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.